Well, the White House press briefing room is now a waiting room for a plane that's never going to take off. The new White House press secretary has not set foot in the White House press briefing room. One of Donald Trump's White House press secretaries never set foot in the White House press briefing room in the last Trump presidency. That last Trump White House went over 300 days without a press briefing. 300 days. And then 4 years ago, this is what happened in the White House press briefing room on Inauguration Day.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this historic day. It's an honor to be here with all of you. When the president asked me to serve in this role, we talked about the importance of bringing truth and transparency back to the briefing room. And he asked me to ensure we are communicating about the policies across the Biden-Harris administration and the work his team is doing every single day on behalf of all American people. There will be times when we see things differently in this room, among all of us. That's okay. That's part of our democracy.
The Trump White House doesn't think so. They don't think that's part of our democracy. They don't care about what Jen Psaki just called our democracy. Every day, Jen Psaki walked into that briefing room, every day, for 2 years, and took all of their questions and handled those questions masterfully, better than any White House press secretary of the television era. Then Karine Jean-Pierre took over the briefings every day for 2 years. The White House press corps became as openly hostile to Karine Jean-Pierre as they have ever been to a White House press secretary, including the famously beleaguered Ron Ziegler of the Nixon White House, who had the impossible press secretary job of trying to defend a criminal president. The White House press corps attacked Karine Jean-Pierre more than they ever attacked Ron Ziegler, because although there are some able and honorable reporters in that room, as a group, they have absolutely no sense of balance whatsoever. And as of tonight, there is no White House briefing even scheduled, none. And there is not a single complaint from the White House press corps. They could turn on their cameras and scream at the empty podium and televise that to show their outrage at not being allowed to ask a single question of the White House press secretary, but they would never dare do that in the Trump White House. We all know that life isn't fair, and Washington certainly isn't fair, and the White House press corps, for this first week at least, personifies just how unfair Washington can be. We should not pass from the Biden White House to the Trump White House without noting the grotesque double standard that the Washington press corps has applied to Joe Biden and Donald Trump, entirely to Donald Trump's benefit. It's not just Republican members of the House and Republican members of the Senate who know better, who have accommodated themselves to Donald Trump. We all know that Republicans in Congress who know better, who have accommodated themselves to Donald Trump, do that completely out of fear, the fear of losing their re-elections to a Trump-favored candidate. Bravery is not a typical characteristic of politicians, so there's no surprise in politicians, Republican politicians' fear of Donald Trump. And it doesn't take bravery for a reporter to scream at Karine Jean-Pierre in a White House press briefing. And it didn't take bravery for reporters to scream at Joe Biden in the Oval Office, as they did, or in the Roosevelt Room, as they did. But it would take bravery for them to scream at Donald Trump or at the White House press secretary working for Donald Trump if she ever shows up in that briefing room in, say, the next 300 days. Don't be surprised if you don't hear reporters screaming in the White House for at least another 4 years, because Washington is now operating under the Trump standard. And it is not just Republican politicians who are operating under the Trump standard. The day after Donald Trump legally forgave, through commutations or pardons, all of the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, including every single violent criminal who was convicted of physically beating and attacking police officers, even some Senate Republicans couldn't justify Donald Trump's decision.
People who committed violent crimes on January 6th of 2021 should not be pardoned. And I think this is a terrible day for our Justice Department.
It's wrong to assault anybody, but certainly to assault an officer. And I'm a big back to blue guy.
I'm disappointed to see that, and I do hear the message that is sent to these great men and women that stood by us.
Glad those words are on the screen because I couldn't hear Senator Murkowski. There was nothing wrong with your TV set. So here we are. It's the Trump standard. Most Republican senators, most Republican members of the House of Representatives are desperately afraid of criticizing Donald Trump for pardoning people who beat police officers, who tried to kill police officers and said they wanted to kill Mike Pence. The Trump standard changes that for Republican members of Congress, except for those few voices that you just heard. The Department of Justice had to send victim notifications to the police officers who those Trump rioters assaulted and beat and threatened to murder and tried to murder. They actively tried to murder them. Those police officers got victim notifications, as is required by law, saying that the people who attacked them by name, telling them who they were, will be released and have been released back into the community without any court supervision whatsoever. Sergeant Aquilino Gonell received this message this morning, informing him of the release of Frederico Klein, a former Trump appointee to the State Department, actually, who received a nearly 6-year sentence for assaulting police officers and other crimes. Quote, advance notice of this release was not possible since this release was immediate and/or unexpected. Upon release, the inmate will reside in Annandale, Virginia, but is not subject to community supervision following release. Prosecutors said that Klein, quote, joined the large mob fighting against the police on the West Plaza. While there, he shoved police officers who were trying to control the crowd and protect the building. During that assault, Klein called out, "You can't stop this." He also called to rioters behind him for help in pushing against the police. Klein was convicted of 8 felonies, including 6 assaults, civil disorder, and obstruction of an official proceeding, and 4 misdemeanors. Because most of the January 6th convicts have served their time already, actually only 211 of the Trump insurrectionists were released by the Bureau of Prisons within the 12 hours of the Donald Trump order. They're now able to stand back and stand by, as Donald Trump might want them to do, ready to engage for Donald Trump in any way he might call upon them to do in the future. Because most of the January 6th convicts have served their time, the entire process of those individuals under the Bureau of Prisons custody took approximately 12 hours and resulted in the release of 211 individuals. In several of these cases, family members and partners helped bring rioters to justice, informed on them in some cases, including leaders and members of extremist groups like the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters. And these family members are now afraid for their lives. In an interview with USA Today in October, the ex-wife and son of the so-called Oath Keepers leader, Elmer Stuart Rhodes, expressed fear that they are on a kill list. On this program in October, Jackson Reffitt explained why he reported his father, Guy Reffitt, to the FBI, and that his father brought his guns to Washington on January 6th. Jackson Reffitt told us how he would feel last night if Donald Trump were to free his father. What will it mean to you if all of the January 6th prisoners are released on Inauguration Day?
It means I'm always going to be in danger. Trump has said that one of the biggest targets is the enemy within. And I'm sure from a lot of perspectives, such as Trump's, I'm one of those examples. So if my father and everyone involved in January 6th is released, I don't know what else to think other than fear.
His father threatened to kill him before he knew that his son turned him into the FBI. Now that Donald Trump has freed them all without supervision, every single prison sentence, from the longest term of 22 years for Proud Boys leader Enrico Tarrio for seditious conspiracy to those with short jail sentences for misdemeanors, they've all been erased. The rioters assaulted more than 140 police officers with chemical spray, tasers, bike racks, stolen riot shields, a fire extinguisher, flagpoles, and other weapons. Some arrived to Washington that day with their guns, and former Capitol Police Officer Michael Fanone testified to Congress that other rioters threatened to shoot him with his own gun. Michael Fanone suffered a heart attack and traumatic brain injury from that attack. In the body cam footage of that assault, Officer Fanone can be heard desperately trying to stop them from killing him by telling them that he is a father.